excuse me. You've not been good to her. All you've done is treated her like shit to steal back a fortune that you lost and she deserved. You're a pack of vultures, knives out and bloody for the feast. Well, you're not getting bailed out this time. Miss Cabrera has decided definitively not to renounce the inheritance. Furthermore, it is my professional recommendation to the local authorities that the manner of death in the case of Harlan Fromby is ruled as suicide, and that the case is closed. Thank you all for coming. Goodbye. Listen, Marta, we're almost there. Look, I'm sorry. Officer Wagner, keep the family out of this room and get them out of the house if you can. But just stand by with your additional officer. Get all of the family out. Well, not all of them. Indulge me for a bit. Look, Mara, I know you already told me, I know Ransom told me, and I know you're telling me now, but I spoke in the car about a hole at the center of this donut. And yes, what you and Harlan did that fateful night seems at first glance to fill that hole perfectly. The donut hole inside of the donut's roll. But we have to look a little closer. And when we do, we see that the donut hole has a hole in its center. And it is not a donut hole at all. It's a smaller donut with its own hole. And our donut is not yet whole at all. Why was I hired? Why would someone hire me? I was hired before the sealed will was read. Yes, the person must have known the contents of the will. And one step further is that same person must have known that a crime was committed. And furthermore, if the intent was to reverse Marta's inheritance, then they may have known that Marta was responsible. It's an intriguing combination of factors. Someone who knew what Marta did, wanted to expose it. They could not reveal how they knew. Yes, Fran was blackmailing you, but she wanted the money. Ergo, she did not want the crime exposed. They would have had no reason to speak up. No, the answer is not so simple. Now, with the entire solution in my field of view, the arc of this case is a tragedy of errors. And Marta, it will not be easy to hear. But there is at least one true guilty party behind it all. Guilty in the true sense of acting with malice and committing a heinous crime with selfish intents. Trooper Wagner! No, I don't mean. Ransom. I didn't tell you exactly everything, though. We'll get to that. But first, Mr. Hugh Ransom Drysdale, you might tell us all why you hired me. You're right, I'm going too fast. Let's back up. To the night of the party. Your argument with Harlan. What were the overheard words by the Nazi child masturbating in the bathroom? He heard, "My will," and "I'm warning you." You and Harlan were drama mamas. You shared a love of twisting the knife into one another. I don't believe he would have slipped it in halfway. No. I submit that Harlan told you everything. Marta, remind me what Ransom said his conversation with Harlan ended with? That you could beat him and go. And I asked myself, Marta, why would the topic of the will have steered around to Marta? There's one obvious explanation. Granted, it's a lot of heavy conjecture, but it's the only way that what comes next makes sense. So you storm out and drive into the night, and you tell Marta later on of what was it, feeling of overwhelming sense of clarity. And you have to make do for yourself from here on out. Marta, the will, Harlan, you won't get away with this. Do for yourself. And a plan forms. You return, careful to avoid the gate security range. And then 1 foot up towards the house, you sneak in, up the trellis, so as not to be seen by the rest of the family. who are still having their party downstairs. What you need to do will take moments, but it is essential that you are alone and undetected. You knew the medications that Harlan took. You knew what Marta would be injecting him with that night. And you knew if Marta was responsible for his death, even unintentionally, then the Slayer rule would nullify the change will, and you would get your share back. You used the syringes and the kits to switch the liquids into two medication vials. And as a final precaution, you took the naloxone, a life-saving antidote. It's the truth, Marta. How many vials of morphine and I'll show you. You would have given him the correct doses. Yeah, but not accidentally. I tipped over the labels of these two vials here. The vials themselves are identical. How did you know that this one was the morphine? You knew because there is the slightest, almost imperceptible difference between textures and viscosity between the two liquids. You knew because you'd done it 100 times before, and you gave him the correct medication. You are a good nurse. I'm sorry, Marta. But yes, Harlan was perfectly fine. His blood was normal. The cause of his death was truly, solely suicide. And you are guilty of nothing but some damage to the trellis and some amateur dramatics. In fact, if he had listened to you, then he would have been alive today. A twisted web. But we are not finished untangling it. Not yet. Marta, when Great Nana spotted you climbing down the trellis, she said, "Are you back again already?" Because earlier that night, she saw Ransom. Granted, we don't have a shred of evidence, just as we have no real proof of Marta's mixing up the vials, so it's your word against... All right, well, we do have her confession. But if you'll indulge me, I'd like to spin a little further. Much later that night, you would have had to come back to the house, break back in, and retrieve the incriminating tampered vials. However, this time the dogs were outside, and they barked, waking Meg. No matter. You'll get the vials tomorrow. But tomorrow brings news not of a medical error and a guilty nurse, but of a slit throat and suicide? Now the circumstances are perfect for the anonymous hiring of me. You know a crime's been committed by Marta. You need her to be caught for it, but you cannot reveal you know how. Enter Benoit Blanc. The body was discovered early in the morning. The police, the medical examiners, the family, everyone swarms in, and there's no possible way you can get to Marta's medical bag to remove the vials. You must wait for your moment when the investigation is over and you know the house will be empty. And that's why you missed the funeral. There's no one home to wonder why you're going into Harlan's study, or so you think. Poor Fran. She witnessed you tampering with Harlan's medication in the medical bag. She didn't know what you were doing, but she knew you were up to no good. And so her mind begins to turn. She loved Harlan. She hates Ransom. So the poor girl decides to test her theory and make this asshole pay. She gets a copy of the toxology report. Numbers mean nothing to her, but if Ransom is guilty, its existence is a threat. So she photocopies the header and makes her blackmail note. But she didn't send it to you, Marta. She sent it to Ransom. And when Ransom first gets it, what's his reaction? Elation. He still thinks Marta gave Harlan the tampered drugs. A blood tox report will prove that Marta's guilty. He goes to the will reading in high spirits, ready to see the family tear themselves apart, secure in the knowledge that it'll all be undone when the tox report comes to life. And then Marta's confession, and everything turns on its head. Now he realizes that Marta has committed no crime, and the Tox report will prove her innocence. A changed will is going to stand. He has lost. Unless, unless you decide you're not going to give up the money. You've come this far. Just one step further. Just one last act. In for a penny, in for a pound. And you decide you are in. Step 1. Destroy all evidence of Marta's innocence. Step 2. Send Marta the anonymous email with the late morning rendezvous time. And deliver the blackmail note. Step 3. Keep your appointment with Fran. Now the board is set. Marta will get the blackmail note. You will put the pieces together for her. The Tox report, her one chance at getting away with it all. You'll guide her to the rendezvous. You'll make an anonymous call to the police, and they'll catch her there with the body and the burned evidence. Marta will be arrested for killing Fran and Harlan. And it would have worked if we hadn't brought you in for questioning so you couldn't make the anonymous call. And if Fran had not stashed a safety copy of the Tox report, and if Marta had not outplayed you once again by having a kind heart, by saving Fran's life, though it meant losing her inheritance and going to jail, she didn't play your game. She saved Fran's life. Oh, yes, Fran, who will confirm this fairy story or something close to it. I will have you, Hugh, sent to jail.